This is 6 WDSU.
TV 6 New Orleans.
This is your Esso Reporter.
Good evening, everyone. This is Alec Gifford reporting.
For most of us, our earliest memories of Alec look like this, the Esso Reporter. That's Esso.
From the heart of New Orleans, this is TV 6 News at 5 with Dick Edwards, Kim Peterson, Russ Minshew, and Greg Fox.
NewsCenter 6 tonight with Alec Gifford, Nancy Holland, Buddy DiLiberto, and Dan Milham.
Good afternoon. Tonight's top news, tonight's only news, the crash of a Pan Am 727. That crash on takeoff from New Orleans Airport this afternoon.
NewsCenter 6 tonight with Alec Gifford, Nancy Holland, Buddy DiLiberto, and Dan Milham.
Good evening, everyone. Nancy is off tonight.
NewsCenter 6 with Lynn Ganser, Charles Ziwi, Buddy DiLiberto, and Dan Milham.
Good evening. Lynn Ganser's on assignment.
Good morning. Good morning. This you make New Orleans sing.
Alec Gifford, Ann Mulligan, and Margaret Orr with weather. This is NewsCenter 6 Midday.
Good afternoon, and as
New Orleans sing.
Bob Krieger, Ann Mulligan, Vince Marinello with sports, and Dan Milham, the weatherman. This is NewsCenter 6 at 5.
hands off.
Make New Orleans sing.
Lynn Ganser, Charles Ziwi, Buddy D with sports, and Dan Milham, the weatherman. This is NewsCenter 6 at 6.
Good evening.
You make New Orleans sing.
Charles Ziwi, Lynn Ganser, Buddy D with sports, and Dan Milham, the weatherman. This is NewsCenter 6 tonight.
Good evening.
You make New Orleans sing.
Charles Ziwi, Beverly Carr, Buddy D with sports, and Dan Milham, the weatherman. This is NewsCenter 6 tonight.
Richard Anderson, Joan Malter, Ed Daniels with sports, and Steve Bellis with weather. This is NewsCenter 6, the weekend edition.
Good evening.
The news is next on WDSU TV 6 New Orleans with Lynn Ganser, Alec Gifford, Buddy D with sports, and Dan Milham with weather. This is NewsCenter 6 at 6.
Good evening. New Orleans Public Service Incorporated wants to trade a larger convention center for the
WDSU 6 New Orleans. Good morning. It's 6 o'clock, and this is the Breakfast Edition with Bob Krieger, Margaret Orr, and Leslie Hill.
Good morning. It's a Thursday, the 8th day of September, and this is the Breakfast Edition.
WDSU 6. It's 5 o'clock, New Orleans.
Good evening. I'm Terry Wood.
And I'm Beverly Carr, and this
6.
It's 5 o'clock, New Orleans.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to 5 o'clock, New Orleans. I'm Terry Wood.
6 Evening News with Terry Wood, Lynn Ganser, Buddy D with sports, and meteorologist Dan Milham.
Good evening, Fire Chief William.
New Orleans. And now, 6 Evening News with Lynn Ganser, Terry Wood, Buddy D with sports, and meteorologist Dan Milham.
Good evening, everyone.
WDSU 6 New Orleans. Now, 6 News Weekend with Gary Mattingly, Ed Daniels with sports, and Steve Bellis with weather.
The breeze of 89 has turned into a fire problem in New Orleans. Firemen have been battling blazes all over the city since noon yesterday. Good afternoon, everyone. We'll tell you more about the fire problem in a minute, but first, the weather and a look at the road conditions. Well, as we forecast, we still have freezing temperatures in the city, and the mercury is supposed to drop into the single digits tonight. Margaret Orr joins us now with the latest on the cold weather.
WDSU 6 New Orleans. Now, 6 News Tonight with Terry Wood, Beverly Carr, Buddy D with sports, and meteorologist Dan Milham. WDSU 6 New Orleans. And now, 6 News Tonight with Terry Wood, Lynn Ganser, Buddy D with sports, and meteorologist Dan Milham.
Good evening. Terry has the night off.
WDSU 6 New Orleans. And now, 6 News Tonight.
Good evening, I'm Norman Robinson. Lynn Ganser has the night off. And our top story,
From your 24-hour news source, this is 6 News, the 755 report.
This is 6 WDSU New Orleans. Now, from your 24-hour news source, this is 6 News Tonight.
This is 6 WDSU New Orleans. Now, from your 24-hour news source, this is 6 News Tonight.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Gary Mattingly.
And I'm Lynn Ganser. Norman Robinson has the night off.
Now, from your 24-hour news source, this is 6 News.
It's back to business for the United States Congress. A brush with the law for Tonight Show band leader Branford Marsalis and singling out the state's worst polluters. Good evening. I'm Norman Robinson.
And I'm Chris Fairbairn. It is called the Industrial...
Now, from your 24-hour news source, this is 6 News Tonight.
All of a sudden, we seen a big gust of wind. It was the tornado coming towards us. So we ran into the building. We ran into the hallway, and we tried to get down, and then I got trapped underneath some bleachers.
Tonight, people in Grand Isle relive the horror of a killer tornado.
From WDSU TV New Orleans, this is 6 News.
The nation's Attorney General Janet Reno visits New Orleans tonight. At the same time, more information is being released on David Koresh, the Waco compound raid, and Reno's involvement. Good evening, everyone. I'm Gary Mattingly.
From WDSU TV New Orleans, this is Channel 6 News Today.
Good morning, New Orleans.
You're watching Channel 6, WDSU TV, New Orleans. And now, Julie Miller and Steve Bellis. This is Channel 6 News Today.
A St. Bernard jury reaches a verdict in the trial of...
You're watching Channel 6, WDSU TV, New Orleans. And now, Julie Miller and Steve Bellis. This is Channel 6 News Today.
Good morning and welcome to Channel 6 News Today. I'm Steve Bellis, checking that forecast in just a sec. But first, I got to tell you, Julie Miller is live at the Clearview Shopping Center.
From WDSU TV, New Orleans, Channel 6 News Today continues with Julie Miller and Steve Bellis.
It's been missing for 7 years now, and a piece of Canal Street history is back.
You're watching Channel 6, WDSU TV, New Orleans. And now, Alec Gifford and Margaret Orr with weather. This is Channel 6 News Midday.
Little Angela Lakeberg, the little girl separated from her Siamese twin.
You're watching Channel 6, WDSU TV, New Orleans. And this is Channel 6 News Midday.
Mardi Gras, the monarch of...
You're watching Channel 6, WDSU TV, New Orleans. And this is WDSU 6 News at noon.
Here looking at it, the ribbon is cut and the National D-Day Museum is now open to the public. Quite a morning.
You're watching Channel 6, WDSU TV, New Orleans. And this is Channel 6 News at 5.
The daring balloonists have to abandon their adventurous dream once again.
You're watching Channel 6 News at 5 with Michael Marsh and Melanie Sanders. AMS meteorologist Dan Milham with weather, Ro Brown with sports, and Stephanie Boswell with 6 on your side. You're watching Channel 6 News at 5 with Norman Robinson, AMS meteorologist Dan Milham, Ro Brown with sports, and Stephanie Boswell with 6 on your side. You're watching Channel 6, WDSU TV, New Orleans. And this is Channel 6 News at 6.
2 days after an explosion of violence at a school in Colorado, a student is shot at a Baton Rouge area school.
Because you know what? You're watching Channel 6 News at 6 with Norman Robinson and Susan Roseton, Chief Meteorologist Dan Milham, and Rich Lenz with sports. You're watching Channel 6, WDSU TV, New Orleans. And now, Norman Robinson, Susan Roseton, AMS meteorologist Dan Milham with weather, and Skip Baldwin with sports. This is Channel 6 News Tonight.
This little boy's okay now. We'll tell you how he survived a fall from a third-floor window.
You're watching Channel 6, WDSU TV, New Orleans. And this is Channel 6 News Tonight.
Criminal Sheriff Charles Fody is in the hot seat over recent jail escapes. Now, the mayor and the new top cop are moving in to shore up the dangerous problem.
Well, first of all, we want to review.
You're watching Channel 6 News Tonight with anchors Norman Robinson and Susan Roseton, AMS meteorologist Dan Milham with weather, and Skip Baldwin with sports. You're watching Channel 6 News Tonight with anchors Norman Robinson and Susan Roseton, AMS meteorologist Dan Milham with weather, Skip Baldwin with sports, and Janet Winters' 6 on Your Side report. You're watching Channel 6 News Tonight with Norman Robinson and Susan Roseton, AMS meteorologist Dan Milham with weather, and Ro Brown with sports. You're watching Channel 6, WDSU TV, New Orleans, and this is Channel 6 News Tonight.
There were approximately 20 individuals that were staying in a group camp. They experienced signs and symptoms of carbon monoxide poisoning.
It's becoming an all too common problem. Carbon monoxide fumes leaking from heaters and sending people to the hospital. This time, 19 teenage girls taken to the hospital on the North Shore.
You're watching Channel 6 News Tonight with Norman Robinson and Susan Roseton, AMS meteorologist Dan Milham with weather, and Rich Lenz with sports. You're watching Channel 6 News Tonight with Norman Robinson and Susan Roseton, AMS meteorologist Dan Milham with weather, Rich Lenz with sports, and Stephanie Boswell with 6 on Your Side. This is News Channel 6 this morning at 5:30.
You're watching WDSU TV Channel 6 New Orleans. We're building WDSU around you. This is News Channel 6 at noon.
The parade first, parade first.
You're watching WDSU TV, Channel 6, New Orleans. We're building WDSU around you. This is News Channel 6 at 10.
Our top story tonight, New York's newest tragedy.
Nose down. Perfect. No smoke, no flames. Just dropped out of the sky.
You're watching News Channel 6. We're building WDSU around you.
Continues. Your local news is next.
Now, News Channel 6 at 10. Our top story.
It's just not safe anymore.
Carnival concerns tonight.
I'm very concerned about my own safety.
As revelers try to put last night's deadly shooting behind them.
I'm not going to be held hostage.
You're watching News Channel 6. We're building WDSU around you.
This is News Channel 6 this morning at 6.
Now, News Channel 6 at 10. Our top story.
Temperatures are on the way down, over 10 degrees in just 5 hours, and is expected to get much colder. Good evening, everyone. I'm Ken Jones.
And I'm Camille Whitworth. Thank you for joining us tonight.
You're watching News Channel 6, local, live, late breaking. From WDSU, News Channel 6 is on your side.
Meningitis vaccines are supposed to be mandatory for college students, but many have found a loophole around it. Nonetheless, more than 700 Dillard students lined up for the shots today at Dillard University. Good evening, I'm Norman Robbins.
And I'm Chris.
You're watching WDSU News Channel 6 on your side.
After sitting in a FEMA warehouse for months, millions of dollars in supplies to rebuild New Orleans have finally arrived.
You're watching the WDSU Weekend Edition of News Channel 6 this morning. This is WDSU News this morning. This is what's happening now on WDSU News at 4.
The road to repeat starts this Saturday right here on WDSU. The Saints are on.
This is WDSU News at 5.
All I can say at Rumble High School, what I know about this is the first time we've had anything.
This is WDSU News at 6.
Tonight, a scathing report on the Recovery School District.
According to a state audit, millions of dollars in equipment.
This is WDSU News this morning. This is WDSU News at 4. This is WDSU News at 4.
Roots on the rooftop.
This is WDSU News at 5.
After 175 years, New Orleans' daily newspaper is dying.
Today, the company that owns the Times-Picayune handle all the rains. WDSU News at 5 starts right now.
This is WDSU News at 5.
Southeast Louisiana continues to dry out after the day-long rain we had on Thursday.
Now as all that rain runs off, there is still concern about river levels this afternoon.
This is WDSU News at 6. This is WDSU News at 6.
Latest murder. The News at 10 starts now.
This is WDSU News at 10.
For me to start expressing personal opinions about my depth of disappointment is a dangerous place to go.
U.S. Attorney Jim Letton holds back his frustration after learning one of his own, Assistant U.S. Attorney Sal Perricone, has been violating the trust of Letton's office. Perricone sits at one of the highest levels.
This is breaking news from WDSU.
New Orleans firefighters are battling a two-alarm fire at the Old Palace Hotel. This is a live look at the hotel.
You're in WDSU.
Right now, police on the North Shore are searching for a gunman after a shooting on the Tammany Trace.
More
I-10 closures tonight, and it could affect your commute. I'm Blake Hansen live with when and where coming up.
Plus, nearly 24 Boy Scouts are hospitalized after a campout. What sent the scouts to the emergency room? WDSU News This Morning continues right now.
On your side in Southeast Louisiana, this is WDSU News This Morning.
If you're outdoors, be cautious in the heat. Again, we are in the midst of summer as you wake up at 6:31, taking a live look outside through our Leaf Circle camera. Already warm, temperatures in the 80s. Jay joins us now with a check of our exact cast and just how high those temperatures are expected to rise.
On your side in Southeast Louisiana, this is WDSU News at 4.
And first at 4, numerous reports of hail falling across the area. This is City Park. About an hour ago, you can see the hail pounding the pavement there. Rain and severe storms have been moving across southeast Louisiana.
On your side in Southeast Louisiana, this is WDSU News at 4 with Scott Walker, Camille Whitworth, and Chief Meteorologist Margaret Orr.
The Saints' first scrimmage is not until Saturday, and their first preseason game is not until Friday, but it felt like a game day practice.
You're watching On your side in Southeast Louisiana, this is WDSU News at 5. On your side in Southeast Louisiana, this is WDSU News at 6.
It's finally here, so I'm excited to get started and to be with the guys out here. It was a great day, and it's definitely hot.
Football season is here. After a disappointing 2012, the boys in black and gold have a renewed sense of hope. Good evening, everyone. I'm Fletcher Mackel.
You're watching WDSU.
Right now at 10, 2 deadly explosions in 2 days. Who's calling for a crackdown on chemical plants and what neighbors say about their safety? Plus, celebrating a respected spiritual leader, how the community paid its final respects to Father Michael Jock.
And I'm Fletcher Mackel here at the College World Series in Omaha, Nebraska. Coming up, we'll tell you how the LSU players are preparing for their huge showdown Sunday against the UCLA Bruins. Plus, find out how the Tigers players gave back to the Omaha community today.
On your side in Southeast Louisiana, this is WDSU News at 10.
Tonight, a Louisiana watchdog group is calling for serious enforcement at the state's chemical.
Coming up in the moment. On your side in Southeast Louisiana, this is WDSU News This Morning.
And good morning as you wake up at 5 o'clock on this Wednesday. I'm Randy Russo.
And I am Charles Divins. Welcome to July.
You're watching WDSU.
Right now at 5, an NOPD officer killed in the line of duty laid to rest today. What family and friends of Officer Daryl Holloway said about their loss. And Governor Bobby Jindal makes a national announcement. Louisiana citizens weigh in on the new Republican presidential hopeful. Your news starts right now.
On your side in Southeast Louisiana, this is WDSU News at 5.
Good evening, I'm Gina Swanson. The NOPD said goodbye to an...
This is breaking news on WDSU.
We begin this morning with breaking news.
That's right. Right now, firefighters are battling a massive fire.
Live, local, late breaking. This is WDSU News This Morning.
Well, you are starting off to a very wet Friday morning. Roadways already slick right now because of the rain that we saw overnight. So let's get
live, local, late breaking. This is WDSU News at 4.
Right now at 4 o'clock, we are tracking rain across southeast Louisiana on your Wednesday. Chief Meteorologist Margaret Orr will have your full forecast coming up. But right now, we are following breaking news. A portion of Chef Mentor Highway shut down due to a bad crash. Good afternoon to you.
Live, local, late breaking. This is WDSU News at 5.
Thousands of peaceful protesters gathered in Atlanta, Georgia, demanding justice for the recent killings of Philando.
Live, local, late breaking. This is WDSU News at 6.
I'm a man that believes that this is a place that God is raising up men for him.
An important arm of the New Orleans mission going to the North Shore. Good evening, everyone. I'm Camille Whitworth.
And I'm Scott Walker. A homeless census.
Live, local, late breaking. This is WDSU News at 10.
First, tonight at 10 o'clock, a live look outside. Rain, thunderstorms, even a tornado moved through parts of our area. The big question is, are we done? Good evening. Thanks for joining us. I'm Madonna Hopkins.
And I'm Scott Walker. What does the rest of tonight and tomorrow hold? Chief Meteorologist Margaret Orr standing.
Live, local, late breaking. This is WDSU News this morning.
Well, right now it's 5:30, and today hurricane watches and storm surge watches could begin to be issued along the Gulf Coast as we track the potential for a possible tropical development in the Gulf of Mexico. Now, forecasters now say there's a 90% chance that we could see a tropical depression by week's end, but there's still some uncertainty as to
Live, local, late breaking. This is WDSU News at noon.
And we start with breaking news. A Madisonville man locked up this afternoon accused of killing his partner on Christmas night. St. Tammany Parish deputies say Harry Cleveland
secure a victory. And day one of Supreme Court nominee Amy Coney Barrett's confirmation hearings. Her judicial philosophy in her own words. Still ahead.
And it's been exactly 1 year since the deadly Hard Rock Hotel collapse site. I'll tell you how the victims are being remembered coming up.
Live, local, late breaking. This is WDSU News at 4.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Travers Mackle. Sulla Kim anchoring from home. She'll join us with a lot more in just a few minutes. But first, you're taking a live look at the Mercedes-Benz Superdome, where in just over 3 hours, the Saints, well, they're going to try and start a winning streak. But as the black and gold try to get back.
Live, local, late breaking. This is WDSU News at 5.
Well, get ready for another big night of carnival parades. We've got 3 parades about to roll in Uptown tonight.
And it all kicks off in about 30 minutes with the crew of Babylon at 5:30. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Sulla Kim.
And I'm Sean Kreisman. As
WDSU News at 6 starts right now.
Live, local, late breaking. This is WDSU News at 6.
We're just over an hour away from kickoff between the Saints and the Chargers as you take a live look outside the Mercedes-Benz Superdome. Good evening, everybody. I'm Travers Mackle. Tonight, the black and gold, of course, trying to get back on the winning road, but the course doesn't come without a roadblock. For more on tonight's matchup, let's check in live with my brother, WDSU sports anchor Fletcher Mackle.
Live, local, late breaking. This is WDSU News at 10.
'Twas the night before Christmas, and Santa is on the move. Look, he is ready to bring presents.
Right now at 10.
New player for head coach Dennis Allen will introduce you to the newest member of the Saints. Search warrant executed, the documents retrieved from the Archdiocese for a high-profile sex abuse investigation.
Sliding into a summer pattern, how hot it's going to feel for the events, Jazz Fest, Zurich Classic, and when weekend rain could return.
Plus, feeding families, the ideas some local leaders are considering to make sure your kids don't go hungry this summer.
WDSU News at 10 starts right now.
First at 10, we are following some.
You're watching Channel 6, WDSU TV New Orleans.
You're watching Louisiana's first WDSU Channel 6.